What is up, guys? It is Matthew, Actual Exotic Cars. So the topic for today's video is going to be about getting around California admissions. What I would personally do if I lived in California and was trying to import either gray market vehicles or vehicles that would not adhere to California smog admissions, how I would try to get around them. So basically, before I begin the premises of this video, my last video I discussed importing K trucks, what my thoughts were on that. And about the last half of the video, I kind of went over different ways of getting around these K truck bans. So before I even really begin with this video, I kind of want to go over what my thoughts are on this entire admissions thing. So let me scroll down here really quick. This is basically a graph of where all admissions come from. And if you look at transportation, 12% of all admissions come from road transportation. So what percentage of that do you think's like big trucks and stuff like that? It's probably a majority in my opinion. So basically when we're talking about like gray market vehicles, which again only stand for what, like 1-2% of US vehicles or something like that, or like exotic vehicles that people drive around that aren't necessarily just from a dealership. I mean, we're talking about a percentage of a percentage. I mean, I guarantee you this number for gray market vehicles or vehicles that would not pass smog emissions, we're probably talking about a couple percentage points here. So if your big concern is smog or emissions or stuff like that, again, I think a K truck is a really good example of people that K trucks probably get way better emissions than a full ton pickup truck that you're going to buy brand new at the dealership, but they still want to ban the K trucks. So this is not about emissions at all. Like I said, I mean, we're only talking about 1-2% emissions, if that at most. Where if you look at industry and stuff, if these politicians really cared about emissions, I mean, again, coal's 20%, other industries 9%, iron, steel 5%, crops 7%. I mean, even agriculture takes emissions. All these other sectors are making way more emissions than your car is, by far. It's not even close. Like, you're not even doing anything by having these smog tests. It's absolutely ridiculous. So that is my stance on this entire argument. Again, this isn't political. I know California is a very left-leaning state, but for example, I praise the state of Texas, who reversed their K-truck bans after looking at it, and it was actually a Democratic representative within the state of Texas that led that charge. And on another note, the video I did before that, basically about the U.S. dealership scam, I went over the former Republican governor of Michigan, Rick Snyder, who actually made it more difficult for consumers to buy cheaper vehicles. So this is not necessarily a political divide. There are pro-automotive politicians, there are anti-automotive politicians, and they're kind of spread across both parties. So I'm not trying to make this a political divide video whatsoever. So that is my stance on this completely. So the easiest way to get around admissions, if you live in the state of California, and you probably guessed it, is to move. That is the cheapest, easiest way to do it. Again, maybe if you get more pro-automotive politicians, something could change, but given the fact that these emission standards have been in place like since the 70s, maybe even before that, I doubt that's ever going to happen in our lifetime unless it gets ridiculous enough. Also, California, I think, is one of the states that pledged to have all electric cars by, what is it, like 30 years or something like that, which is going to be almost impossible to do. So if you are a car enthusiast, California is literally the worst state out of all 50 states you could possibly live in. Jay Leno, I'm sorry, you chose the wrong state. So again, that is not a viable option for all people. Some people might have roots. And again, you know, automotive cars is not the top of everybody's life. And maybe upending your entire life just because you're trying to keep your car is not the best idea. I completely understand that. So what other legal options can we go through other than leaving the state of California? So let's say you're trying to import your dream car or whatever, or you're bringing in a car that's not going to abide by California smog emissions. What do you need to do? Well, first thing, we need to know what smog inspections are. So again, this is basically your vehicle does not need a smog inspection. This is actually from the DMV of California. Now, I have read if you have like a 68 to a 74, you're still required to have the emission requirements of whatever the requirement of California was for that year. So if you have like a 1970 car, you still have to abide by 1970 California emissions. I don't know how true that is. Their official website saying if it's before 75, you're in the clear, but I've seen other websites saying contrary to that. So that is something I would look more into if you're within that, you know, few year period there. and I would be kind of sort of concerned with. But again, this is the official DMG website, so you might be okay. So these are basically the rules. Diesel trucks actually don't have to worry about it, or diesel vehicles if it's 97 or older. So if you have a diesel, actually it probably wouldn't be that bad at all, especially if like a 94, 95 diesel import. I think 25 years or older is what you need for an import. Again, I made a full video on how to import vehicles. Long story short, to summarize that vehicle, if it's older than 25 years old and unmodified, you're good to go. So given the fact that 97 is like 26, 27 years old, basically anything that's older than 25 years old, with the exception of a couple of years, if it's diesel, you're probably good to go. So that is a good way of getting around that. If you have a K truck, if it's diesel, you're probably good. Electric vehicle, obviously. If it's less than 8 model years old, but then again, you'd be passing smog anyway because it's pretty much a brand new vehicle at that point. So that is what we are trying to get around right now. So I guess for the example, since I have UAZ America, I have had customers from California reach out, multiple customers from California reach out. And this is a topic that even though I don't live in the state of California, I've never been to the state of California, I've had to research myself just so I could give them a response. So what would I do? So I'm going to start with the easiest step first, and we're going to work our way to the most complicated way of getting around these stupid emission standards. So again, we already went over leaving the state of California. So if you don't want to leave, another somewhat easy way, you can fill out an application for temporary smog exemption. So basically this says that, hey, my vehicle is out of state, I can't register it right now, can you just give me tags through the mail? Sorry, out of state. This does not work if you're in Nevada or the country of Mexico, but if I understand correctly, I want to say they will mail your tags to you out of state. You have to put reasons, so hey, my grandma's sick, I had to go to New York or whatever, and you should be good to go. Now, the big thing with this, what I would be worried about, if this is your long-term strategy, is to have an out-of-state. First thing, you actually have to be out-of-state. Reason why, at the end here, it says that I certify under law that I am out-of-state. Again, I don't know if they'd go after you or not. I want to take the risk. I mean, it says you can't do Nevada, even if you just went to like Arizona, Oregon or something for the week. And technically you're out of state at that point, even if it is for a vacation. Heck, you can even be in Hawaii, and I don't really think it matters. You should be fine. I guess that is legal at that point. But if you do it year after year after year, it might throw a red flag. That's what my concern would be. This is something I would look more into. But at least as a temporary fix, as a slap on, just a duct tape fix, this is something I would consider. And let's say I knew as a fact I was only going to be in California for 2-3 years. This is probably the route I would take. This is the cheapest route by far. So what is another route? Well, another route that I would take would be, again, I covered this in my last video, the Montana LLC loophole. Basically, what this means is I can start an LLC, a blank dummy LLC in Montana, register my vehicle with that LLC. I can do all this through the mail, by the way. And given the fact it's Montana, I shouldn't have to pay sales tax or anything like that. So a lot of people with exotic cars actually register them through Montana because it's cheaper. Because you think about it, 6-7% sales tax or whatever, and you have like a $200,000 car, that's a lot of money. So that is another thing that I would do if it was me. I would try to go through another state, register it through another state. Here is a list of all the states that don't require a license to match your registration. So these are some states. South Dakota kind of stuck out to me as an easy one, non-residents. And some of these states might even mail the tags and everything to you. So you could even hire somebody in one of these states with a power of attorney to go on your behalf, register the vehicle, and then just have the tags mailed to your address. I don't know if they'll do that or not. You might need a P.O. box or something. Again, some of these states are completely different. They're on the list, but they have requirements. Like North Dakota, I think you actually have to be working within that state. So that's probably a no-go for a majority of people. But some of these states doesn't seem like it is very difficult to do. So that is another option. That would probably be easier. At least you're still within the U.S. And the reason I bring that up is you could, technically speaking, register the vehicle internationally. So another route, I haven't really looked into Mexico. I have looked into Canada, and there are a couple of provinces that you could register your state in within Canada that you don't need to be a resident of. Biggest difficulty with that, I think you would still have to formally import your vehicle into Canada, or let's say you're importing your vehicle from like a car from Japan or something. You could just import it from Canada to begin with, or if you're buying your vehicle in Canada, just keep it there, keep the registration there, and that way you don't have to deal with California smog. But problem is now you're dealing with foreign governments, things might get dicey. If you had family there or if you're from there, it'd be a different story. But if you're not, I don't know if I would necessarily do that. Another thing that I kind of thrown out, which is probably the most difficult way to do this, would be to have like a foreign corporation, kind of like the Montana loophole, but international. So let's say you have a company, let's just use Canada again, within company, you just set up like a dummy corporation or something, and basically you'd register the vehicle in that corporation. You should be able to drive it over no problem. Here is an HS7 declaration form for safety. There is a section basically saying that it's a non-resident of the U.S. I'm pretty sure, given the fact that the corporation is technically classified as an independent entity compared to you, that you would be able to take it through that corporation. Given the fact that an LLC is dependent, I don't know if that would necessarily count or not. It might, because it is still like legally independent from you. But that is another route that might work. Again, there isn't a form or a box for a business here, though I have seen plenty of posts saying that people have brought their business registered vehicle across the border without issue. So that would probably be another way, another route, if you're really serious about trying to stick it to the man and get around emission standards. Granted, it's probably the most difficult. So if it was me, what would I do? Just to get by, I mean, this is probably your easiest route. I wouldn't want to abuse this though. So let's say I live in California. Let's say I wanted to import like a Nissan Skyline. I would probably, depends on how much money I have. So another route you can do is there are actual companies in California. I don't really have a list of any, but there are importers in the state of California that do bring your vehicles up to smog emissions. Now, the reason I didn't even really look at this too much, it costs 10 to 15 grand to do this. So that's another option. That's probably the most legal option, but it's also the most expensive option by far. Most people don't have that much money laying around. Now, granted, if you have like a supercar or something, you have to spend 10 to 15 grand to make it legal, whatever, who cares? But for the average consumer, the average car enthusiast, this is not an option. For most people, it is a lot of money, and it's not like you're going to see that money back. That's probably the legalest option. So if I could do that, and if I had stupid money, or I should just say if money was not an issue, that is what I would do. I guess being an average consumer, that's not very practical. So again, like I said, just to get by, this would work. This would not be my long-term strategy. If I was planning on sticking around California long-term, I would try to register in another state. I think Montana would probably be your best bet just because there's literally companies. Again, I have not worked with this company. It's just the first thing that popped up when I Googled it. There's multiple companies that do this. Just because there's companies, that's all they do. And if you even go through here, this company again, titling and registration, RV, heavy trucks, motorcycles, cars, exotic cars. You can even do snowmobiles, boats, aircrafts, trailers. Like, you don't even have to go to the state of Montana. They do everything with a power of attorney, if I remember correctly. So this would be a really good option. And it only takes a couple days for the entire process to be done. Granted, read something on a forum or something somewhere that is technically not legal, and if they could prove, or a neighbor or something called you in and you could prove that the LLC wasn't necessarily doing anything, then there would be some legal ramifications for that. In my mind, if you're going through a business, the liability would be on their end, not your end, because they're providing the service. But that is something, again, if you're in bad with the neighbors, you might want to think about. Again, some of these other states, especially if you have like family or connections there, let's say you go to like Florida all the time or something, you might, or South Dakota or something like that, you might want to look into that a bit more. That would probably be a very viable option, is to have an out-of-state registration. Out of all the options that I've talked about, that's probably the most viable option for most people for a long-term strategy. Again, I would do this as a short-term strategy. The foreign thing, I would basically say, unless you were dealing with foreign companies a lot, or if you're originally from abroad, you have family abroad, I wouldn't necessarily touch it because I feel like you would be opening a can of worms. I have dealt with a lot of foreign plates and foreign companies and stuff, automotive related, and it is a tremendous pain in the butt, and it seems like most people that even do this stuff for a living, that check all these, don't even know what they're doing, because not a lot of Americans necessarily go through this process. So that is what my recommendations are. Again, like I said, I've been asked this question personally a couple times with my Soviet 4x4 import company, who was America, so I kind of wanted to elaborate basically on what your options are. It is not the end of the world, so thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.